Would you please introduce yourself before we begin?
My name's Deja Ranger. I go to NAU.
If I introduce a topic that is too sensitive and you may choose to move on to the next question, would you like to move forward?
Yeah.
Could you, to the best of your ability, describe your experience with gun violence at school?
On February 12th, 2016, I was in my spring semester, or I guess second semester is what they call it in high school, of my sophomore year, and on that day there was a school shooting at my school. It was a murder-suicide shooting. I lost two of my friends in the shooting. The person that committed the shooting was my friend, and then the person she killed, which was her girlfriend, was also my friend.
Okay, so you described these girls as having a romantic relationship. Do you think that there was any toxic relations that caused it, or do you believe it had something to do with the fact that they were in a relationship? Because I know a lot of school shootings are based on the fact of the LGBTQ, disliking.
It was definitely a toxic relationship, so for a while, so the girls' names are Dorothy and May. Dorothy, which was the one that committed the shooting, she and May had been having relationship issues for a long time, and May was slowly breaking it off with her, and she was talking to another person, another guy, and it wasn't like Dorothy wasn't aware of this. She was perfectly aware of it, that their relationship was ending, but there had just always been this sense of control and ownership in the relationship. And so when Dorothy would try to leave May would say no, be really possessive. And when May finally tried to leave Dorothy, it was the same way, but to a whole different degree.
So what was your personal relationship with these two girls? Were they acquaintances or close friends?
Dorothy was she was my romantic interest at one point, right before the shooting. She was a really good friend of mine, and then May was also a really good friend of mine. Neither of them were acquaintances. I would consider them two of my closest friends.
Given this experience, would you describe it as a traumatic one?
Oh, definitely.
Would you say that this had impacted you, speaking both emotionally, physically, and as a student?
Yes. I definitely still, I struggled going back to school because I had a fear that another shooting would happen again. And even to this day, it's been 3 years now, just about, and I still struggle going out into public places, into crowded places, and I still think and I still worry about getting trapped again in the school and not having any escape, or losing people to gun violence again. Emotionally, I still I struggle with a lot of guilt, a lot of anxiety over it. I guess you could call it PTSD almost. Physically, I'm pretty good. I think it took a toll on me physically when it first happened. I got really sick just from stress, and I started missing a lot of school because of it, but I'm better now.
Would you say that Independence High School was affected due to the exploitation of the event through the media? To elaborate, were parents sending their students to different schools?
Some did, yeah. I now when I talk to other people and I tell them I went to Independence and they tell me what school they go to, and they'll say oh, but I live by Independence. I'll be oh, why didn't you go to Independence? And they'll say well, I heard some crazy stuff happen at Independence. I'm well, you're not wrong. So Yeah, there was definitely a lot of people, especially right after it moved. Not after it moved, but right after it happened, a lot of people moved away.
Did you notice a trend of less students being enrolled like the following year?
I wouldn't say less students, but I feel like a lot more. I feel like parents were a little more hesitant to send their kids to our school, but at the same time, they didn't have a lot of options.
Were your school's standardized test scores affected?
Oh, not the standardized ones really, because we didn't really have any that I can like look at the data for. But I know that our AP test scores were like really bad that year, just because like that happened literally probably a month before our AP test, and so we lost a lot of time, and a lot of people were like in shock, and you know it's really hard to like recover after something like that.
Has Independence High School ever had any history of violence in the past?
Yes. I can't remember what year it was, but it was back in the 80s or maybe the early 90s, something like that. Late 80s, early 90s. There was another school shooting that happened. I think 2 people died as well. I think it was a murder-suicide as well. I was talking to a friend, and her parents were there when that happened. And then we also had a lot of fights. We had a few like, you know, the typical like high school bomb threat or whatever. I think some kids that brought knives to school before. Nothing like too major aside from the shootings.
How would you describe the neighborhood your school's located in, and do you think that influenced the violence that took place?
We live in a pretty good neighborhood. It's mainly just like houses and farms, nothing like too big. Not really any stores or anything, just houses.
So you already expressed how students were affected by this, but what obvious behavioral changes were taking place in your peers?
A lot of my friends started drinking afterwards, doing a lot of drugs, a lot of partying. I definitely seen like a lot of my friends like pretty much just spiral out of control a lot afterwards. Like they would drink in the library, like get drunk in the library in the middle of the day, get high in the middle of the day or leave campus, go smoke. A lot of people stopped coming to school regularly. People stopped doing their homework. They just like lost a lot of motivation.
How did this experience affect the overall environment of your school?
I think at first people were sad. There was a lot of camaraderie, like people being there for each other. But then at one point I remember like a lot of kids taking it as a joke and just an excuse to like get out of class. Because obviously, you know, we had like the crisis people there. And so a lot of kids, they would pretend to be sad or whatever. Cause like, you can't tell them like, no, you can't go. And so they would go. And like, obviously I was in there cause, you know, I was obviously a mess. And I would see like just tons of kids just like laughing and joking around. And so I think right after the event, there was, you know, the mourning. But then at one point it became a joke.
Would you say that more people were affected by this hardship than the media portrayed? For instance, the media would mostly talk about students be affected by this, but do you think that there was more people than just the students?
Definitely, but at the same time, the like families of the victims or like teachers, they didn't really want to speak about it. And then I think a big part of like the media was that they portrayed the wrong people. The people that actually were affected by it didn't want to talk about it. And so the people that they had on the news and in articles and stuff, they didn't actually know May and Dorothy. They just like wanted attention. So it wasn't really that they didn't get like all the people that were affected, they got the wrong people. It's just a lot of people that just wanted camera time.
So without taking this into account right now, how do you currently feel about guns? Or to elaborate, do you believe in gun control?
I have mixed feelings about gun control. I definitely believe that there should be gun control, but at the same time I know that a lot of gun control policies target minorities and people with mental illnesses. This is just from a political standpoint. Like, you know, the vast majority of mass shootings in America have been committed by conservative white guys who don't suffer from mental illness. They're not minorities. Those people are still going to be able to get guns. They still have their permits. Most of them buy their guns legally. And so there needs to be a limit on the actual mass buyers of guns, which is, you know, conservative white people. But the current gun control laws target the mentally ill and people of color who need guns and weapons in order to protect themselves from people targeting them.
So did this incident shape or change your opinion on guns, or did it support the opinion you initially had?
This incident, it kind of supported the opinion I already had, just because, like, I don't believe minors should have access to guns, and then also, like, a lot of people don't know this, but the gun that was used in my school shooting was illegally taken from someone. So it was a boy that had given Dorothy a gun, and he was a white boy, and it was like, he didn't get charged at all for distributing a weapon to a minor, or for theft, or for contributing to a murder-suicide. He didn't get charged with anything, and I feel like a big part of that was because of our current gun control policies. You know, they viewed him in a sympathetic way, which is how I feel they view most people who commit these crimes, because statistically speaking, they are white guys. And so, yeah, it does currently support my current opinion, just because I feel that gun control should really be more about punishing people that commit these crimes in order to set an example, almost, because I feel like people go out and they commit these crimes because they know, oh, I'm just going to get life in prison, if even that.
So as someone who has personal experience with gun violence in school, how would you be an advocate regarding the school shootings to promote prevention to the public?
I think I would definitely encourage open talks about mental health. I would definitely tell people to be open and honest with their friends about their feelings. I feel like a lot of people knew what was going to happen at our school, but they were too afraid to say anything. They were too afraid to go up to Dorothy and ask, like, hey, like, what's going on? Are you okay? Things like that. I also feel like we should just be open about, like, our experiences with gun violence and how it affects us, because I feel like a lot of people don't take it seriously until it happens to them, and so they can't really have any empathy towards victims of gun violence.
Is there anything you would like to personally add on the record about your experience?
Not really.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.